Welcome, everyone. It's great to be with you once again for our weekly broadcast. Just before we get into our interview, I want to give you just a few updates. We're very close to beginning the new school year. Next Monday, believe it or not, on July 27th, we will welcome back student leaders to campus, residents, assistants, and the like. And the following Monday, August 3rd, will begin our move-in process, and students will be coming in phases from August 3rd through August 9th. August 10th will be the first day of classes. Students are going to be receiving from the university boxes of PPE that they're going to be having masks and digital thermometers and gloves and disinfectant sprays and things of that nature. Everyone will be tested before they will return to campus. If they test positive, their return will be delayed. All classes will be administered in a dual kind of modular way, both for those that can be in class and those students for health reasons or travel reasons cannot be in, will be able to tap in electronically. The testing center has been established here on campus. It's in the southwest end zone of the Notre Dame Stadium, and that's going to be used for regular testing of our students here on campus. And there will be, in fact, today was the first day for a number of the staff. We're going to be having to do a daily check-in via an app on our phones or computers each morning. Whether we report to work or not, or whether the students have class or not, where you have to have your temperature and you have to check different systems. And unless you get a green light across the board, you will not be admitted to classes or to the workplace. And 54,000 signs are currently up on campus. It's the HERE campaign, and it's all about trying to remind everybody to practice the proper safety mechanisms and so forth on campus. So a lot of work is going on to this and much more to maintain safety. There's going to be a major orientation for all students and faculty and staff before they come back. So we're trying to cover all bases. That it's been a total team effort. We're thrilled today to be joined by Professor Jen Mason McAward. She is a Notre Dame alumna. She joined the Notre Dame law faculty in 2005. And since 2015, Jen has been the director of the Klau Center for Civil and Human Rights, which is part of the Kiel School for Global Affairs, but also has a close relationship with Notre Dame Law School and beyond. So welcome, Jen. It's great to have you with us. And tell us a little bit to get started. You know, where did you grow up and how did you come to Notre Dame? And what was your Notre Dame undergraduate experience like?
Well, thanks for having me. I grew up in Euclid, Ohio, right outside of Cleveland. And I went to public schools, but knew that I wanted to go to a Catholic university. And I actually remember the moment that I realized that Notre Dame was the place for me. I was on the campus tour during a visit, and one of the undergraduate tour guides was walking backwards and telling us about Notre Dame. And she stopped and picked up a piece of litter and kept on going. And it was just that small thing that told me about Notre Dame, that it's a place where people care, where students care about their home and where they care about each other. And I knew that that was where I was meant to be.
Wow, that's a powerful story. I've noticed that at times that, you know, similar anecdotes where our provost, when he started, Tom Burrish, picking up some garbage, and it left a deep impression on me. So tell us a little bit about your experience at Notre Dame, undergrad. How did it shape you, form you? What did you study?
Yeah, I love Notre Dame. I was a government major and a theology minor. I was an RA in Pangborn Hall, and I was president of the Notre Dame Folk Choir. And it was just a place where I grew in knowledge and faith. You know, I give primary credit, of course, to my parents, but I would say that Notre Dame shaped me to be a person who's deeply committed to my faith and to my community and to the common good.
Fantastic. So tell us a little bit about your life post-graduation from Notre Dame, including, you clerked ultimately for Supreme Court Justice Sandra Day O'Connor, the legendary justice. Tell us a little bit what that was like as well.
Sure. After I graduated from Notre Dame, I served as a Holy Cross Associate in Portland, Oregon. I spent a year volunteering at a shelter for battered women and children. And then I went to NYU Law School. And as you said, I wound up clerking for Justice O'Connor, which was an extraordinary honor. I'm just a kid from Euclid, Ohio. And to be able to work with her, law clerks basically are advisors and kind of researchers and writers for the justices. And so I just learned so much from her. She also taught me about balancing life and work. She was a mom to 3 kids. She was at the top of her professional game. She would have a exercise class every a couple days every week. And it was in the basketball court that's above the courtroom in the Supreme Court. They call it the highest court in the land.
Wow.
And so a couple days every week, I had to go do aerobics with Justice O'Connor, which may have left a scar on my psyche, but it was a great experience.
That's fantastic. So I know you have 4 young children now, so that balance is had to come in really handy between the high level work you're doing through the Klaus Center and as a faculty member, and then raising, what are the ages of the kids? 6 to?
I have 4 daughters who are 6, 8, 9, and 11.
Wow. So thank God you learned that balance. That's a tall order. So why did you return to Notre Dame Law School in 2005 to join the faculty?
Well, after I clerked for Justice O'Connor, I worked as a litigator in Washington, D.C., representing plaintiffs in civil rights cases and representing kids in abuse and neglect cases. And the whole reason I became a lawyer was to have the tools and the power to make a concrete difference in the lives of the poor. And I loved what I was doing, but the reason I was doing it is because I believe that working for justice is an imperative of my faith. And I wanted to be able to better integrate my faith and career. And what better place to do than at Notre Dame, where I can not just teach students about civil rights law, but also kind of share my vision of using law in the service of human dignity. And so I love my job. I feel so lucky to be here every day.
So did somebody reach out to you? Did you see the posting and applied? How did the process work out?
It's one of those providential stories that happens. I didn't know Patty O'Hara, who had been the vice president for student affairs when I was an undergrad. And a mutual friend connected us when I was trying to figure out what my next step was. And so I wound up on the phone with Patty, and she said to me at one point, well, would you consider coming to teach civil rights at Notre Dame? And I laughed at her. I said that I don't know how to teach. That seems crazy. And it was one of those things where you hang up the phone, you spend the night lying awake, and I called her back the next day and groveled, and the rest is history.
That's fantastic. It's a great story. Kudos to Patty for seeing that in you, and she was dean of the law school at that point, right?
She was, yeah. I owe my whole career to Patty O'Hara. She's a remarkable person. She just retired, and I'm just so grateful for everything that she's done for Notre Dame.
Yeah, no, she's a legendary leader in the anthems of Notre Dame history. So tell us about the work of the Klaus Center for Civil and Human Rights, and how has it evolved over its roughly 45 years?
So the Klau Center was originally founded by Father Ted Hesburgh, who had been the chair of the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights. And after his time on the commission was over, he was actually fired by President Nixon for insisting on publishing a report that criticized the Nixon administration. Father Ted came back to Notre Dame and founded this center, wanting it to be kind of the place for innovative education and policy work on civil rights. And over time, it evolved to host a graduate program in international human rights law. And it stayed in the law school, and this LLM program, as it's called, is a wonderful program. But eventually, the center moved into the new Keough School of Global Affairs. And that was when I came on board. And to have the opportunity in an interdisciplinary school that's aimed at policy work, it seemed like exactly the right place to grow and build the center so that we can reach not just law students, who are of course part of our mission, but also undergraduates and other graduate students from across the university and across a wide array of disciplines. So we've been really building up our student and faculty community in a way that really encompasses a broad swath of campus.
Yeah, so it started out then more in the law school, more narrowly focused, and it has broadened over time to become much more interdisciplinary. So tell us a little bit, explain to everybody, what is the difference between civil and human rights?
I view civil and human rights as two sides of the same coin. So we tend to think of civil rights as rights in the United States that aim at kind of inclusivity in our public life. And international human rights are rights of people in the United States and across the globe, aimed at kind of fostering their human dignity. But I really think that the commonality there is that we are concerned with the God-given human dignity of every person. And so whether we're working on domestic civil rights issues in the United States or international human rights issues abroad, we know that George Floyd has the same inherent dignity as does a refugee from Syria. And so the mission of the Klaus Center is to recognize that dignity and see how, in any context, domestic or international, we can bring that to fruition.
Got it. Well, you know, I remember after I graduated, I spent a couple of years living in a shanty town in Santiago, Chile, under the Pinochet dictatorship. And I remember the Catholic Church there recorded all of the human rights abuses that were occurring there as the only really independent force to stand up to the dictatorship of people who were tortured, people who were detained and disappeared, and so on and so forth. And they built up all of this evidence, and it was threatened to keep it in Chile. And I believe they sent it to Notre Dame, right, to the Klau Center for Civil and Human Rights. And so what kind of collections like that do you have that makes the Klaus Center distinct?
So you remember quite correctly, Father Bill Lewers used to be the provincial of the Congregation of Holy Cross, and he worked in Chile and at Notre Dame. And my understanding is that he smuggled inside his clerical suit these records about the Pinochet regime from Chile to the United States and Notre Dame. And so the center, the Klaus Center, played an important role in translating the reports of those abuses and making them,
right?
Pardon me?
Thousands of personal accounts, testimonies, yeah.
Yes, it was a really important moment for justice and human rights in Chile. And, you know, Father Bill Lewers was an important part of making that happen.
How about Father Ted's civil rights papers? Do they reside within the Klaus Center, and what have you done with that?
So Father Ted's civil rights papers are archived at the Hesburgh Libraries and in partnership with the Klaus Center. And so I've studied them intensely to understand Father Ted's work on the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights. I think we all understand that Father Ted had an important role to play, but I've really been able to look at those documents and see what an intellectual leader he was on the commission. So, for example, the Civil Rights Act of 1964 kind of set the framework for equal legal opportunities for people of color, outlawed sex discrimination, et cetera. And Father Ted himself was the one who kind of hammered out the framework of that act. And that's just one small nugget that you're able to distill from Father Ted's papers in the library.
Now, Jen, I know that you've been an award-winning teacher. You've won a number of distinctions on that front. And when Father Ted was living, I know you were teaching a civil rights class, and you used to bring the class each semester to meet with Father Ted in his offices. Can you tell us a little bit about those experiences?
Meeting Father Ted was always the highlight of the semester for my students. He would go around the room and shake each person's hand and ask them their names and where they were from. He just had such a human touch. You know, he was a person who knew how to balance professional excellence and pastoral compassion. So here we had the former president of Notre Dame, the former chair of the US Civil Rights Commission, the creator of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And he still cared about connecting with every student who came into his office, and me. He always made time to pull me aside at the end and see how I was doing. And so my goal is to strike that same sort of balance at the Klau Center. I want it to be a place that operates on a very high level of excellence with research and teaching, but it's also going to be, or is, a place that builds community and works to connect with and serve our students as people.
That's great. I think you're embodying that Father Ted's legacy incredibly well. Now, he envisioned the center almost a half a century ago, seeing the need for it in his post-presidency. I remember having many conversations with him because around that same time, he developed what is now the Klau Center for International Peace. And he also, the Kellogg Institute, which focuses on how to move authoritarian regimes to more democratic ones back in the day. And both of those were funded. And he said, the Center for Civil and Human Rights is my poor stepchild. I need to get the funding. And the Klau family, Rick and Molly Klau, two of the most wonderful people in the entire Notre Dame family, together with their children, stepped up to support this. But here's a question that I have. It seems like over the last 50 years, we've made a lot of progress on anti-poverty initiatives throughout the world. We've also made a lot of progress on limiting or eradicating major health crises around the world. Still certainly a lot to do in both of those areas. But it seems that the assault on human rights, civil and human rights globally, has been either unabated or is perhaps even worsened over time. Is that accurate? And what does the Klau Center envision to make a greater impact on those problems?
I do think it's accurate. It's a sad but accurate truth. And so from our perspective, the value that Notre Dame can add is to educate our students and to form them into leaders who will take those issues seriously and address them in their careers, whether their careers as civil and human rights lawyers or as business people or as teachers. I think everybody can do something about civil and human rights. From our perspective, we're so proud of the LLM program in international human rights, and graduates from that program have gone on to serve in really important roles across the globe. But especially since I've been at the center, I take really seriously Father Ted's founding vision of focusing on racial justice issues. I think it remains one of the moral imperatives of our time. And so at the Klaus Center, we're really thinking carefully about how we can engage and educate our students on racial justice issues. And so we actually have
initiative, right? An anti-racist language. Can you tell us about that?
We do. So last January, we launched our first project on race. It's called With Voices True. And that is a project that tries to encourage and enable the Notre Dame community to talk about race and to listen to each other talking about race. So members of our community are invited to participate in interviews and conversations about their experiences of race, maybe something that happened at Notre Dame, maybe something that happened at other points in their lives. And those interviews become part of an archive at the Hesburgh Libraries, and the Klau Center publishes highlights of those interviews to spur more conversation. And With Voices True has actually just been incorporated into the Moreau first year experience, the seminar that every first year student takes. So we're really delighted that project will be deepening racial discourse at Notre Dame. But we also know that this summer, with the murder of George Floyd, our students are going to return to campus really engaged with questions of racial justice and seeking education. And so, as you mentioned, we are launching an educational initiative called Building an Anti-Racist Vocabulary. At its heart is a lecture series weekly and a one-credit course that will bring leading scholars and public intellectuals to talk to Notre Dame students via Zoom. And we've developed a really extraordinary lineup of speakers for this fall, which we'll publish soon. But just to give you a sense, The topics that we're going to cover this semester include faith and race. We'll have Archbishop Wilton Gregory speaking.
Great.
The New York Times 1619 Project and Reparations, Nicole Hannah-Jones, who's a Notre Dame graduate. Racial disparities in COVID, Black Lives Matter, housing segregation. It's a really broad and deep curriculum, and I think that we're going to have we already are getting a lot of interest from our students. So we're very proud at the Klaus Center to have developed and launched this.
That's really great. I think that's one of the challenges for us, is to make sure that we educate our students for a world that is increasingly politically charged and racially divisive, and to be able to understand. I think a lot of the times there's not the cultural competency to understand that you may be well-intentioned, but you engage in microaggressions. You do things that insult and hurt others unknowingly. And it sounds to me like this campaign is going to really help to raise the consciousness on many levels.
That is certainly the hope. And there are a lot of people on campus who care deeply about this and who are working with the student community in different ways. And so at the Klaus Center, we know that what we can bring specifically to the table are educational initiatives. And so we take that mission really seriously, and that's why we're aiming on this kind of lecture series and coursework piece.
Great, that's wonderful. So you, in addition to your scholarship, which focuses on the relationship, between Congress and the federal courts with respect to protecting individual rights, you've recently given special attention the last several years to the 13th Amendment issues. Why? And it doesn't, again, seem like it could be more relevant to the times.
Yeah, so the 13th Amendment to the Constitution is the one that abolishes slavery and involuntary servitude. But it also gives Congress the power to pass laws to enforce the eradication of slavery. And as it becomes more and more clear that we continue to have kind of a racial caste system in this country, it's morphed over time. But we still have, different classes of people based on race. I think it's really important to think about how Congress can provide national leadership in the form of laws or otherwise to deal with this racial caste system that we have.
Mm-hmm. How would you say, if you were to take a step back and look more broadly, how would you say that the Klaus Center for Civil and Human Rights is distinct or even unique within the landscape of higher education?
I think a couple of things make us really unique. The first is that we take this integrated approach to civil and human rights, which we've already discussed. That we want our students to have a truly global view of civil and human rights that encompasses the United States as well as what's going on abroad. And I think that dual focus makes us unique. Another thing that makes us unique is that we're grounded in our faith, in Catholic social teaching, and in kind of moral discourse. And so we're trying to bring those perspectives to conversations about civil and human rights, thinking about how do we empower people of faith or leaders of faith communities to address racial injustice or to address human rights issues abroad. And so I think that makes us really unique, and we're hoping to bring a new and distinct and important voice to these kinds of debates.
That's great. In a recent letter, the new dean of our law school, Marcus Cole, said that the LLM program, which is that advanced degree in the law school that you really help to direct and administer through the Klau Center, is not just going to focus on the education of human rights attorneys globally, but it's also going to focus more on preparing civil rights attorneys domestically to fight for the human rights and civil rights of U.S. citizens. Can you tell us a little bit more about that partnership and how that scope is going to be broadened?
Absolutely. Marcus and I are already in conversation about how the Klaus Center can partner with the law school, how the Keough School can partner with the law school to make that happen. And I think one important thing to think about is making sure that we have the curricular capacity and the teaching capacity and the research capacity to support the expansion of the program in that way. And so it is entirely consistent with the mission of this LLM program to expand it in this way. And so we're excited to be working on that. And then the Klaus Center is also very dedicated to expanding those educational programs to touch students who are not in the law school, but who might be engineers or scientists who also want to think about how their work can touch civil and human rights as well. So it's a really multifaceted effort. And I'm so delighted to have Marcus's leadership and the leadership of Scott Appleby from the Keough School of Global Affairs as well.
So typically, how many LLM students will you have each year representing how many countries?
So over time, there have been well over 400 graduates from the program representing over 90 countries. And so this LLM program really has just had a global impact and is one of the really defining features of international perspectives on Notre Dame and Notre Dame Law School. And so these graduates have gone on to be human rights leaders in their own countries. And it's just a real privilege to be connected with them and watch the alumni community develop.
So as we mentioned, Rick and Molly Klau have recently, in the last couple of years, made just a wonderful leadership gift to support the center and elevate its work to the next level. Tell us about your vision for the future. Where do you see the Klaus Center going, and what are some things that you're not yet doing that you'd like to see accomplished in the next 5 years or so?
The Klaus have changed everything. As you said, not only are they just wonderful people, they're just really trusted advisors and supportive partners. And so I'm so blessed to be able to work with them to build up the center. And I think we have a common vision that the center is going to grow in its ability to educate our students, as I said, across the university and across disciplines, that it really wants to support faculty and student research that makes Notre Dame kind of a global hub for leadership and scholarship on civil and human rights. And also we want to kind of just build up our ability to support programming and student enrichment to focus on kind of hot topics in civil and human rights across the board. So we really are excited to build the reputation of Notre Dame within Notre Dame and outside Notre Dame.
So how would you say that you envision the impact of the Klaus Center on kind of the shaping the moral education of our students, undergraduate law and graduate students across the board? And are there any, beyond those 400 LLM students that are all around the world, fighting for human rights in some of the most troubled nations, the most difficult spots of the world, how might be some other examples in which ways that graduates of this program are, or these classes are impacting the world?
Yeah, since the Klaus Center was endowed and kind of reinvigorated 2 years ago, we've built up a student affiliate program that now has 160 students and is growing. And so we are really building up that student and now alumni community. And we have graduates who are going on to do civil rights litigation, for example, or working on prison conditions and solitary confinement, people who are working on the death penalty, people who are working abroad in terms of human rights. So we have a really extraordinary group of students. And the goal is that our graduates will leave Notre Dame with a commitment to advancing human dignity that informs whatever they do, whether they're business people or teachers or scientists or civil rights lawyers. And so the goal is to have a really vibrant community here that educates people well and forms them to be real leaders of character when they leave this place.
Fantastic, Jen. Father Ted, had this vision for the Klaus Center for Civil and Human Rights, again, almost a half a century ago. And it's for me, it's so inspiring and gratifying to see you carrying his vision forward as the leader of this incredibly important center. Because if we're to be a great Catholic university, it's not just to be great for our students, but it's to be leaven for a world that is deeply in need. And on this issue of civil and human rights abuses that seem to be rampant globally, it's really, I'm really grateful that you're doing the work that you're doing, and we'll do everything we can to continue to support you. So thanks for your time today. Any closing comments? Anything else you'd like to share?
Well, thanks, Lou. It really is. It's just such a privilege to be doing this work and to be carrying on Father Ted's legacy in this small but I think important way. And there's no better place to do it than at Notre Dame. The work that we do is at the heart of Notre Dame's mission. It's at the heart of our faith. And as I said at the beginning, I feel like working for justice and the common good is an imperative. And so to have this opportunity to direct our students, inform them in this way, I think is just at the heart of what we're doing at Notre Dame.
Fantastic. Well, we're blessed to have you back at your alma mater and doing this important work. For everybody who joined us, thank you for being with us today. And a very important announcement that we're going to have a very special session tomorrow. It's going to start at 1:07. To be very precise here, 1:07 tomorrow afternoon, we're going to have the first major public appearance of our new provost, Mari Lynn Miranda. And this will be an opportunity to get to know her and to be able to even ask some questions to her. So we hope you will be able to join us tomorrow at 1:07 p.m. I don't think you'll want to miss this session. Typically, Jen, we close these sessions with a Hail Mary, and I'd like to invite everybody in their homes or workplaces, wherever you are, to pray with us. And thanks again, Jen. Together we say, Hail Mary,
Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen.
Take care. Thanks again, Jen. God bless everybody. Have a great afternoon. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.